we only have to go back a century or two, and we see quite a few cultures reshaping heads of children, and very dramatic ornamentations. So northern Japan sort of tattooing moustaches on women. So, you know, I'm wondering whether we're just getting a greater homogeneity, or whether there are instances of a diversification of what's cool or what looks good. You've got your hand up, so I think you should go ahead.
Well, I mean, I sort of think there are two things going on, because, I mean, on the one hand, I mean, I'm in the film industry, and I certainly find that when I go to Los Angeles, I mean, I find it a deeply, deeply depressing experience. I audition lots and lots of actresses, and, you know, the first one or two who come in, I go, my God, she's so beautiful, she's so amazing. And I really have to say, but by the fifth actress, it is depressing for a few reasons. One, their body is toned in exactly the same way, all of them identical. Secondly, their noses are practically identical. Thirdly, their teeth are identical.
They have them.
And they have a sort of an identical look. And the most depressing quality to it all is that they've all worked so hard to find this beauty that they leave out the one thing that is truly attractive and the thing that makes you remember them, and that is personality. And, you know, they all look the same, and they've forgotten to have a personality. And I think that's a really strange thing. But on the other hand, what is very interesting is I looked up this morning the top 5 young actresses that, you know, on the various film websites that you can go to, like IMDb, which is, you know, pretty serious one, and Love Film. And weirdly, the 5 top young actresses, not one of them is actually beautiful. I mean, the Saoirse Ronan, who's kind of this sort of, you know, you know her from The Kid in Atonement, this sort of whey-faced, sort of extraordinary-looking little blonde Irish girl. Kerry Mulligan, who, you know, is not conventionally beautiful by any means. And then the third one is Mia Wasikowska, who I discovered who was in the film Alice, Tim Burton's Alice, who's definitely not beautiful. And then Dakota Fanning, who's also not beautiful. So there's a sort of a strange, I think there's a double thing going on. I mean, you know, young people and actresses and everybody's being told they have to be this thing, and yet it's the something else that actually wins in the end.
But those who are making all the money are the Anne Hathaways and you know, Angelinas, and those, you know, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Jennifer Lopez, who get those enormous beauty contracts and things. And they are.
Yeah, but I mean, great actresses. I don't think, I have to disagree with, in terms of, you know, the actresses that we really love and look up to and respect. You know, I mean, here in England, you know, untouched, I hope, by by Knife or anything else, Judi Dench, you know, I mean, everybody loves her, everybody adores her as an actress, you know, I mean, Meryl Streep, you know, I don't know if but she doesn't look like she's had work. I mean, at the end of the day, what we look up to, and yet what we think we need to look up to, seem to be too...
But there's another division there, isn't there? That you can, you look at who people, the male demographic, who they want to shag. They don't want to shag the list of actresses that you've talked about.
Yes.
But you mentioned Angelina or Judi Dench. But you mentioned, you know, the lady who plays Joan in Mad Men and Angelina Jolie, and you've got people who don't, you know, speak one word of English, who will have their tongues laid out as a red carpet for them. So it's, that to me is the division as well, that it's not, and that beauty seems to be global. The decision about that those two women in particular are models of sexuality or beauty
sexy. That's
are the
sexy
things
and
that,
beauty are
that
not the
people
same,
pay a lot of money for, whereas the actresses that you mentioned...
but is that what you find sexy in real life?
I'm not here to say that.
Oh, come on.
I'm just telling you that...
I genuinely don't think so. I don't think in real life people... I mean,
but most
these
men are
girls
pretty shallow.
stick thin.
I would include myself. But,
Sorry,
I mean,
Susie.
you get, but what fascinates me is if you pick up magazines, then of course you get pictures of famous individuals, famous actors, but you get pictures of pretty female faces. And I find it very strange that the magazines are so inundated with pictures of beauty. I mean, maybe it isn't a mystery, but why should there be so many pictures? And they're not just oriented at men. I can understand that.
Do you mean that genuinely it surprises you that in magazines?
It surprises me that women looks at women's magazines with pictures of pretty women, because there you might think, well, is that going to improve self-esteem? Or what's it going to do? I mean,
there's sort of pretty women, and then there's incredible beauties who are they're sort of different, really, aren't they? I think most magazines try to have a mix of the sort of model-like beauty, and actually fashion models are often, most men would not want to, buy them a drink.
Sorry,
buy them a drink.
I think this man has one-track mind.
No, I just...
But they wouldn't, because they're extremely
honest.
tall and thin and unsexy. They're not. There's not a curve on them. That's the sort of look of them, because that's what the clothes, the samples like, without going into the boringness of what happens in a fashion magazine. But that's how the pictures are created. But in other women's magazines, your sort of Cosmo or Glamour or Grazia or something like that, I think people want to have pictures like a very good version of themselves.
So you're talking about aspiration?
Yes.
That these people are role models?
A very good version of themselves.
You have no delusion that you could look like that?
Yeah. But a little bit of a...
So you look to get a few tips on what fashion, But what about the interplay with self-esteem? Because it's going to be sensitive. I mean, how do you see...
Absolutely. I mean, the magazine I'm on now is very different from the magazines I've been on before. So the one I'm on now, we're constantly thinking, what's going to make people feel good or bad about themselves. But that doesn't mean that you can just put everybody into the magazine. I still have the veto on all real people, and I'm afraid I use it because it's a magazine. It's you pay £3.80. It doesn't. I don't think you would find anybody who would say you are going to grow your circulation if you really go full on for what's out there, in the world. People want to feel that there is something special, that they can look at what people... One friend said to me, it's, what your cooler friend who lives in Holland Park is up to. It's that kind of other world that's just a little bit shiny.
So there are aspirations, and you talked about magazines predominantly for an adult audience, not adult magazines, but if we look at a developmental perspective, when's this going to kick in? When are the looks of a child perhaps going to affect his or her aspirations and esteem? I mean, do you think the reactions of others, is this going to start from a very early age?
I think it can change. Yeah. I mean, I think that when you're at school, you are, I mean, beauty is quite a powerful thing at school, although I don't think it's as important as personality. I think personality definitely wins. But what I really have found in my job, and I don't know whether you found that or you found that, but I've very, very rarely met an adult who is really beautiful, who is confident. Most people who have self-confidence and, are popular and do well in life are people with personality.
Which doesn't include confidence.
And most people who are very, very beautiful are constantly insecure because they're constantly aware of this rather elusive thing that will disappear, will go.
Well, maybe we're talking about different types of beauty or different types of attractiveness. I would have thought somebody who's got, not exudes too much of self-esteem, but sufficient self-esteem, that can become attractive in itself because the insecurity probably isn't. But going back to sort of this shaping, I mean, you are responsible for casting young actors and actresses. And Richard, I mean, maybe when did this become apparent to you that you got this life ahead? Was this foisted on you because people thought, oh, well, he looks the part, he can do these things? I mean, or did you get into it as an adult? I mean, what I'm interested is in the origins of the impact of beauty or stardom? No, it's not a clear question. But,
well, I mean, actors are inherently insecure.
Yeah.
Absolutely inherently insecure. And I think the biggest reason that actors are insecure, and I think is also the thing with beauty, is at the end of the day, you're not entirely sure why you do or do not succeed. Mm-hmm. You know, why you win in an audition. I mean, and it's the worst for beauty, I think, much more so than a really good actor like Richard. You know, Richard can at least judge himself on, you know, his previous roles and things. But people come in to meet me, audition for me. I mean, sometimes it's 4 or 5, but I mean, on many roles it can be hundreds of people. They don't know why they got it or didn't get it. Mm-hmm. For the rest of us in this world, we don't operate like that. We know we're judged totally differently. And so therefore, if you're judged by your looks, you're always insecure.
Okay, I mean...
I was just reading, I spoke to you about this before we sat up here, about Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. I don't know whether anybody's read that, but in that book, he talks about the fact that there's not a CEO in any company, male, around the world, who is under 6 foot, who's been successful, and that the majority of people who are considered beautiful, male and female, get paid much more than people who are not. Mm. And he said this is a global phenomenon, that people respond to what is and pay more for somebody who's taller and more perceived to be beautiful. I mean, is a contradiction of what you're saying, that it's talent and personality.
Yeah, the personality, dealing with that aspect. I mean, there are an increasing number of studies that show adult male face shape seems to influence whether they get chosen for leadership, whether they get chosen as a CEO, and it's a specific proportion.
But it's sort of different between what's passably attractive and what's beautiful, don't you think? Because I think you're probably, I can think of lots of pictures of CEOs I've seen in the financial pages who I would not consider, you know, particularly attractive.
Not at all. Good leaders.
Everyone I know, they're all small.
They are
actually,
small.
I can think of plenty who are under 6 foot
I think we're
well.
touching on almost the antithesis of beauty here. I mean, the CEO might be a psychopath in different clothing, but I mean, if you were casting, if we try to consider the antithesis of beauty, if you were casting somebody who had to play an evil part, what would you do? Go for somebody unattractive, or how would you choose? Or how would you, yeah.
Well, it would depend on the character. And maybe here, we are in, perhaps there's different, we're talking about beauty, aren't we, here? We're talking about really...
But you can define it by the opposite.
Beauty, cosmetic surgery, beauty, supposedly. But, and perhaps there's a difference between, that, attractive and nice personality, and then perhaps the people who don't get chosen to get these high-up jobs or whatever, are the people who are, hugely overweight, without being rude, am I allowed to say ugly?
Yeah,
or,
sort of weird looking or something, in a way that people think, oh, I don't think
well, this is what I was trying to get at. If you've got a face which is very much unusual, then it will go into the realms with the audience may be called upon to do corrective surgery if it's such an unusual face. And I'm trying to work out what the stereotypes we might hold about such people. Are they considered, well, there's a whole lot of negative stereotypes, but not necessarily evil. They would just be, if somebody comes in, as you say, classically unattractive, ugly, then we don't hold high opinions of them. But, so, yeah.
Not in my world.
Okay, right. Are there things that we can do then to change our beauty? Can we fake it? Is beauty fakeable? From a biological perspective, it shouldn't be.
I think, one of the things that's been interesting in the look on the British High Street is there has been in the last 15 years quite a change in the amount of time your average girl spends putting her makeup on, doing her hair, etc. What is in fashion at the moment is quite a lot of makeup, quite a lot of hair preparation and things like that. The standards of just a sort of normal girl going off to work seem to me higher and higher and higher. And in a way that is faking beauty, isn't it? That is taking somebody whose hair is one kind of hair and making it different. And there's always been a bit of that. But, you know, having come from a time when, you know, you'd kind of have a shower and meet me outside the BFI or something, you know, it was much more kind of, you know, got on with it. But now it seems to be so much more time spent preparing for a date or even work, just something very normal. There's a lot of attention going on in young girls' heads about the way they look.
But I'm not sure that some of these more superficial things will be sufficient to, I mean, for example,
to make them beautiful.
You can change various aspects, but there's plenty of other things. So age can be recognized by how people walk, by the skin, and okay, there may be facial changes to an individual, but there's still all these other cues, their voice. So lots of other cues might give things away. And, you know, I mean, just arguing that maybe focusing on one aspect of the face isn't going to win out.
I mean, I think the age thing is quite extraordinary. I think I was saying to you before. I mean, I've worked on 3 films in the last 6 months where it is called upon, I've been called upon to find a woman over 50. Who, you know, a woman over 50 has lived a life. You know, that life is interesting, that life is attractive. And certainly out of LA, you cannot find one actress. And, I mean, literally not one. Everybody's like that. And increasingly so in England. And I find that a very strange thing that... and I don't quite understand why people are doing that. I don't understand why they're being advised to do it, and I don't understand why they're doing it, because I don't see what the parts are that they think they're going to get. I don't understand what...
But they are getting them, aren't they? Because
they're not.
Are they not? I don't know. I feel like I see on TV and things like that lots of people. Well, you're working with in the industry. You're not seeing that they're getting parts?
Is there a double standard here? I mean, so
for men and women, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, just let's contrast it. I mean, traditionally, women were chosen for beauty, guys were chosen for their ability to be providers. Maybe that's changing in modern society. I mean, certainly. What's your view? I mean, if you're writing in Psychologies, you must touch on the issue of gender differences. Are we changing in society in attitudes to beauty? Are women becoming more...
Well, I was walking up Regent Street at lunchtime and I passed 2 shops where there are men standing at the door just wearing kind of briefs. Yeah. 2. There was not just Hollister, one next door is doing the same thing. And I just thought, now, I thought as a good feminist, but is this good or is this just even worse? And in the end, I decided it was even worse. But then I don't want to stand there and look. I just feel like, oh, God, you know, where is this brain engaged in this, standing there kind of going, flexing his muscles, welcoming girls, being photographed with tourists in Regent Street. I mean, I'm not going to make a fuss about it, but I just thought, is that any better than a girl in a bikini over the front of a Ford Capri at a car show? And I felt we'd sort of moved along from that.
I mean, we actually have quite a similar thing going on in the film industry, which is that the majority of the young, up-and-coming actors are incredibly beautiful, and not one of them has thought to go to drama school.
Well, is that because they don't need to? They can just leap straight into stardom without having to bother going through training? Yeah. Hasn't it always been that way?
Has it?
Hasn't beauty always been rewarded?
Act, yeah. I mean, it might be a minor plus to learn to act if you're going to be an actor.
Yeah, but it seems to me that, you know, beautiful people I can remember at school, they were always rewarded. So I was so thrilled when when the guy who was the Victor Ladorum at school stayed at 5'8" and lost his bloom was at school. Oh, fuck you! You know, you stayed a dwarf. Yeah. For the rest of your years when we were all sort of scangly and in platform shoes and hideous. And he had his moment then. So I think beauty is always rewarded. And I think that it's what you were saying about these people who look like, I constantly walk, on the tube station, you see people with six-packs. I know that I will never have one. I can't imagine there are many men in this room
the ads
that have it. Yeah. But maybe it's like those Greek statues that the Greeks weren't walking around in togas with six-packs. They were as fat as we are.
I am kind of conflicted over it because and this comes up in the stuff at the Home Office, these round table things I'm involved in, because, in fact, I said the other day, can I just preface it by saying the biggest problem in this country is obesity. So it's kind of crazy that we're all sitting there worried about eating disorders among young girls because, actually, we've got a problem with people eating far too much. But then you do
and actually anorexia is on the rise again.
Yes, anorexia is on, and I do think there are, there is this idea that there is only one way of looking, and that's very slim and this conventionally beautiful way.
Rich points out that beauty always wins. Even if we go to mother-infant interactions, cute infants get more attention. So, and then there's the whole potential feedback of individuals receiving more attention or more being treated with more disdain or being left alone. You're not.
I just totally don't. I just don't agree. I think there's a moment in time that beauty obviously, can win. But at my daughter's school, all the girls that were really the beautiful ones who were the winners at school are all the least satisfied now. And that's at 21. They're the most insecure. They're the most dissatisfied. Whereas the ones who had the personality, and obviously brains even more so, brains and personality and okay looks is the winner, for sure.
Is there anything else we can do with our life to sort of overcome less good looks? It seems that there should be a lot. I'm just thinking of lifestyle changes.
Well, I think we should just aim for there to be more people let into the group that we think of as beautiful, or to be, this idea of role models. It does really seem to work if there are more people. If you look in a magazine and there are more non-white faces, or there are more people with red hair, or there are more people, who are a bit bigger than the average magazine shows, people then really respond well to that. But it's when I was saying before about real people, I think that's not what magazines really, that's not the relationship between the magazine and the reader. It needs to be higher, but it needs to say there are lots of us who are perfectly lovely.
That's talking on looks again, and say, well, let's broaden the definition of what's good. But what about, there are tips for behaviour, because I would have thought that smiling at one another, being attentive and considerate should count for a hell of a lot more, and that's within everybody's aspiration.
It certainly works with blokes. For blokes to do it, but those guys who do that sort of super really attentive kind of number, it just gets the girls like that.
I was intrigued by the Angelina Jolie-Brad Pitt marriage breakup, because you had two people that men, I think, is very handsome, and that she is very beautiful. And he dumped
Jennifer Aniston.
Jennifer Aniston. If it had been the other way around, people, quickly Jennifer Aniston became the victim of this thing of like, but he's got Angelina, so he's made a much better deal. If he had dumped Angelina Jolie and gone off with Jennifer Aniston, it would have been just a completely different. But people seem to accept and endorse the fact, you've got two most beautiful people in the world. In every culture has recognised them as that, so therefore they've got the keys to the castle. So I'm going for plastic surgery and a chin removal and a flow graft tomorrow.
I'm checking with Angelina how confident she is.
I think we should leave it there.
Yes. Thank you very much. If you take a seat down below.
Thanks.
The rest of the